There are places that seem untouched by time, places where trees grow so thick that daylight barely reaches the forest floor, places where every trail promises adventure, and every wrong turn can become your last. Every year, thousands of people visit Hollow Creek National Park. Families come for weekend hikes, photographers search for the perfect sunrise, explorers chase for the forgotten corners of Black Pine County. Almost all of them return home, but not everyone. On September 14, 2025, one man entered Hollow Creek and he never came back. His name was Daniel Mercer, 34 years old, a lifelong resident of Black Pine County, an experienced outdoorsman who had spent years hiking forests, abandoned roads, and forgotten places that most people never knew existed. Daniel wasn't reckless. He wasn't someone who wandered into the wilderness without preparation. His friends described him as methodical. He had maps. He documented his routes. He researched the history of every place he explored. If anyone knew how to survive in these woods, it was Daniel Mercer. When Daniel failed to return home that evening, family and friends assumed something delayed him. Maybe he had lost phone signal, maybe he stayed later than he expected to, maybe he found another abandoned trail worth photographing. But as daylight disappeared, those explanations became harder to believe. The next morning, search crews entered Hollow Creek. Volunteers walked miles of hiking trails. Park rangers searched creek crossings and overlooks. Helicopters scanned the forest canyon from above. Hour after hour, day after day, nothing. No footprints, no equipment, no sign that Daniel Mercer had ever been there. Until investigators discovered one final message. A message sent only a few hours before he vanished. Found something strange. The trail isn't on the map. To understand what happened to Daniel Mercer, we first have to understand his final day. September 14th, 2025 began like dozens of other hiking trips he had taken before. At approximately 8:30 that morning, Daniel arrived at the Hollow Creek North Trail parking lot. A parking security camera captured what would be his last confirmed footage of him. Nothing about the video seemed unusual. Daniel parks his truck. He steps out carrying a blue and black JanSport backpack, confidently walking towards the trailhead. Within seconds, he disappears beneath those trees. No one watching that footage could have imagined it would become the final verified sighting of Daniel Mercer. For several hours, everything appeared normal. There were no emergency calls, no reports of injuries, no witnesses claiming to have seen anything unusual. Then, just after 2:15 that afternoon, Daniel sends a message to his friend Thomas. It was short, only 8 words. Found something strange. The trail isn't on the map. And Thomas immediately replied with, "Where are you?" The message showed that it was delivered to Daniel, but Daniel would never respond. At first, the silence didn't seem to be of any alarm. Call service inside Hollow Creek was unreliable. Friends assumed he'd respond once he reached higher ground or returned to the parking area. But evening came, and Daniel never returned. At approximately 6 p.m., his vehicle was still sitting exactly where he left it that morning. Doors were locked. There was no sign of a struggle, no appearance of any kind of disturbance. It was as if Daniel had simply vanished. The following morning, search and rescue teams launched a full-scale operation. They searched every marked hiking trail. They checked creek crossings where hikers sometimes slipped. They examined scenic overlooks, areas where someone could become injured. volunteers walked mile after mile through the surrounding forest. Helicopters searched from above. Search dogs followed every scent they could. But despite days of searching, there was nothing. Not even a single piece of evidence where Daniel had gone. Most missing person investigations eventually produce something: a footprint, a discarded item, a witness. Some clue pointing investigators in a direction. Daniel Mercer left behind almost nothing, except for the one last haunting message. This trail isn't on a map. At first, investigators believed it was simply a reference to an unofficial hiking path, but as the days turned to weeks, that single sentence would become the center of an investigation that reached far beyond a missing hiker. Because if Daniel had discovered a trail no one else knew about, where did it lead? And more importantly, who or what was waiting at the end of it? People always ask why I decided to look into Daniel's disappearance. Why me? Why not just leave it to the police? The truth is, Daniel wasn't just another missing persons case to me. Daniel was the kind of person who explored places most people ignored. He photographed forgotten locations, mapped old trails, documented the history hidden around Black Pine County. A few weeks before he disappeared, Daniel became interested in Hollow Creek, a place with stories that people didn't want to talk about. Daniel believed that there was something deeper happening in these woods, something he had overlooked for years. And then on September 14th, Daniel entered Hollow Creek State Forest and never came back. The official investigation classified him as missing, but after looking through what Daniel left behind, I started to notice things that didn't make sense. The last message Daniel sent before disappearing wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning. Daniel's text said he found something strange and the trail isn't on the map. Thomas responded, and Daniel had found something that made him stop, take notice, and reach out for help. My goal wasn't to replace law enforcement. It wasn't to create rumors or accuse anyone. I just wanted answers. Because sometimes the clues left behind tell a story, if someone is willing to look. My first step was going back to where Daniel was last seen. Hollow Creek is located deep within Black Pine County, surrounded by miles of forest, abandoned trails, and areas that few people ever visited. According to park officials, Daniel entered the park around 8:30 a.m. that morning. He parked his truck near the main trail entrance and began exploring. His truck was discovered days later exactly where he left it, and Daniel was gone. Before entering Hollow Creek, I reviewed everything Daniel left behind. His phone message, his photos, his messages, his notes. One thing stood out. Daniel had created his own map of the area. Several locations were marked that didn't appear on official trail maps. And one location was circled repeatedly: the old quarry. According to locals, people stopped going there years ago. Some said it was dangerous. Others said there were things in Hollow Creek that were better left alone. But Daniel went there, and that's where I needed to start. The farther I went into Hollow Creek, the more isolated it became. There were no signs, no marked trails, no indications that anyone had been through this area recently. After nearly an hour following Daniel's markings, I reached the area near the old quarry. That's when I noticed something. A backpack. At first I couldn't be sure if it belonged to Daniel, but then when I opened it, inside were some of the items that belonged to Daniel. This is Daniel's backpack, which means he is here. But the question became, why did he leave it behind? Finding Daniel's backpack changed everything. Before that moment, this was a missing person investigation.
Hollow Creek.
Now, there were questions. Near the old quarry, I discovered evidence that suggested Daniel may have reached this location before he disappeared. A trail that wasn't supposed to exist, a location Daniel was determined to find, a mystery buried deep inside Hollow Creek. In episode 2, I'll follow Daniel's final trail deep into the forest and uncover evidence that suggests his disappearance may not have been an accident. Because somewhere inside Hollow Creek, someone knows what happened to Daniel Mercer. The search for answers in Hollow Creek is just the beginning. Every week we'll continue to follow the evidence, revisiting the clues and uncovering the details surrounding Daniel's disappearance. But this investigation can't continue without your help. If you want to follow along as we uncover what happened inside Hollow Creek, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. New evidence, new discoveries, and new questions will be revealed each week. Because somewhere in the woods, the truth is still waiting to be found. Until next time, keep searching for the truth.